Remember the movie Hardcore Henry? Yes, that first-person action shoot-'em-up movie that came out where everyone was decrying, oh, it's so original, such an original concept. However, there were actually a few movies that actually did first-person perspective, not even including found footage movies. I actually reviewed one on the channel here called FPS, also known as First Person Shooter, which came out in 2014. But in 2013 there was a movie called Hotel Inferno, which a lot of people argue was kind of the first movie to be truly first person in its entirety. And now in 2021 we have Hotel Inferno 3, the Castle of Scream. So obviously between them there has been a second one as well. Now this is a Italian movie in production and is kind of very much like the video game style of first person shoot 'em ups. What's the story? I have no idea, honestly. I haven't seen the first two Hotel Infernos, to be honest with you. But watching this third one, you definitely would really need to see the first two, because it seems to pick up immediately after maybe where the second one ultimately left off. But ultimately it follows a character, Frank, who I suppose is our protagonist, but watching this film I know nothing about the protagonist. And he is basically going on a various kind of fetch quests, finding different weapons to ultimately take out this big bad guy. And he is aided by some type of witch that is in the form of this corpse, which is strapped to his back so he can have some dialogue. And essentially it's a series of gory set pieces with exploding heads and kind of guts and things going through various different bad guys. That's it. The movie is very much like going to a Gwar concert, if you are familiar with that band. So what can we say that maybe works in this movie? This is clearly made for a very specific audience. Obviously fans of the first two movies, but film fans that are really into splatter and gore, but not maybe realistic gore necessarily, but kind of like copious amounts of exploding heads, guts being ripped out, but all kind of done in a low budget kind of cheesy prosthetic way, with various kind of like paper mache looking monsters kind of getting ripped apart with gooey special effects and prosthetics. That's your audience for this movie. What can we say that, what did I enjoy about this movie? This certainly has oodles of creativity in it. You know, the kind of the makeshift kind of special effects here are not going to be for everyone, because people will say that they're crappy effects. They're meant to be crappy effects. It's one of these films where it's kind of meant to be a little bit stupid and silly and kind of like low budget looking. I suppose that's part of its charm. Like I've said, it really does look like, if you're familiar with band Gwar, it honestly looks like a Gwar concert. It's that type of kind of special effects. Over the top styrofoam monsters with huge bulbous heads and kind of, you know, gooey intestines inside, things like this. But nonetheless, there's a hell of a lot of various types of different creatures, all of whom explode and get decimated in various different ways. So the gory creativity here is fun for all if you kind of like that sort of thing. I think that the smart move here was to have a kind of this a character where there is on the back this kind of witch character, so at least there is some dialogue. One of the issues maybe I had with the FPS video movie is that there's very little dialogue in the movie because it doesn't really interact with many people. So with this one, at least you have dialogue all the way through. Admittedly, it is our main character swearing through most of the film. I was thinking while I was watching this, man, what, you know, this is like all swearing pretty much. But I will say as well, there are some external shots that we have in this kind of snowy wilderness that I thought actually looked pretty good on a cinematography standpoint. And I think the kind of the location shooting here, when we do see certainly some external shots, does look very impressive, and it really will remind you of a video game. In actual fact, when I was watching this, I was reminding myself that this kind of looks like the like the intro, like the kind of like where you're the training mission, where you are kind of learning the controls, because you have this kind of other character in your ear going, oh, pick this up, push that, put this with that. So it feels like you're watching a tutorial of a you know, a kind of a video game, a first-person Doom-like video game. The action is certainly non-stop, and to be fair, this movie is mercifully short. Because there's really no plot in here. What doesn't work? There is no plot in this movie, to be honest. I mean, it starts out such a cold open. Like I've said, I haven't seen the first two movies, but it really feels like it just runs straight from the previous movie. I think it probably would have been a better had it had. You could still do that, but maybe a little bit more of a softer open, so you could kind of maybe viewers who haven't seen the first two movies can get acclimatized to this one, because it just goes straight into the action. You don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, ultimately the plot is relatively slight anyway. It's just a case of various kind of fetch quests, upgrading the weapons and trying to kill a big monster, and something to do with this guy's wife, and you know, so that the plot isn't particularly complex, to be honest, but nonetheless, you don't feel any type of connection to the characters or anything like this. Now, the movie, I don't think is too worried about that, but it feels more like an experience rather than a movie that you'd watch for any real narrative, because there isn't really no narrative in this movie. And as much as I kind of enjoyed the kind of the special effects and the kind of the gooey headshots and explosions and things like this, I gotta be honest with you, I was kind of getting a little bit bored, even though this movie is pretty much just a little over an hour. It's just the same thing over and over and over and over again. It's just this guy using various different weapons, exploding kind of paper mache monsters. And as fun as that is for 5-10 minutes, after an hour, you're thinking, oh, I could really use a dialogue scene here. Some of the effects work better than others. Some you can kind of are like knowingly cheesy. But some of them I don't like this witch character on the back who just looks like a kind of rubber corpse. I don't know, that because considering it's kind of a major part of the film, it's like a major character, it was kind of somewhat poorly handled, I thought. There's also some really bad editing in this movie. Where we have some transitions where the character, because obviously it's all first person, so this character is saying one thing and it pans away so they can change the kind of the image, and it just looks really jarring at times. I don't think the dialogue is particularly compelling. Like I've said, it's mainly just this kind of guy swearing and throwing insults all the time. It's funny for 5 minutes, but an hour of this is just kind of like, oof, this is kind of rough going, I'm not going to lie. It just kind of feels like this would be great as a short film. But I don't know if it really needs to be a feature-length movie. So really this is just more of a experience, a showcase, if you like, splatter movies. And I think, I got a feeling, I haven't deliberately watched any other or read any reviews of this prior to this, but I can imagine, and I see some people review, if it's got lots of gore in it, they love it, and that's it. And I can imagine there'll be some reviewers who will just like it just because it's got lots of gore in it. And if you're a sort of person that's all you kind of need, then this movie is for you. But for me, I like that as part of a movie, but I also like a narrative in the movie. I also like a story and some characters, and this movie does not have that. So as much as it's a fun experience, watching all these kind of like OTT effects, and I appreciated them, it gets a little old, and there's nothing really to grab onto. So, and I give this one a 4 out of 10 because as much as I think it's a fun movie to experience for a short time, it really doesn't warrant a kind of a film, if you ask me. Now, I'm sure there will be people who'll be disagreeing with my review. I feel this is one of those reviews where it's going to be somewhat divisive, but I've got to be honest, as a film, I just don't think it's particularly strong, because it's just one thing, you know, it's just like exploding guts for an hour, and it's not really a film, it's just a kind of like a showcase for low budget special effects, and it does that very well, but it's not a film, but it's not a feature film. It's not a story. It's not telling a narrative, or the narrative that it does tell is so slight and so kind of like convoluted with what's come before it. It's very difficult to be a standalone piece. So it's a 4 out of 10 for me. But if you just want to watch some OTT special effects, then this one will definitely be up your street. So I do feel it'll be really loved by a specific audience, but I think overall, there was no thought really given to any kind of real story or structure in this movie. It doesn't really have any acts. It's just one thing all the way through. So 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.